The night was quiet, with the moonlight spilling like silver over the lonely garden, and Emma sat by the old wooden bench, her heart heavy with unspoken desires. She often wondered why the nights felt so alive, almost as if someone or something was always listening. Tonight was different. The air carried a strange energy, a pull she couldn't explain. She closed her eyes, letting the soft wind brush against her skin like invisible fingertips, and imagined the presence of a protector, a figure who was both powerful and gentle. In her mind, he was tall, broad-shouldered, and mysterious, someone who could silence her fears just by being near. She felt her breath catch as if the shadows themselves leaned closer to hear the rhythm of her heart. For years she had buried her need for love beneath layers of duty and silence, but now the stillness of midnight whispered courage into her soul. She could almost see him, his deep eyes shining with quiet strength, his aura wrapping around her like a shield. The world beyond that moment didn't matter. All that mattered was the sensation of being understood, of being seen without words. In the hush of that midnight hour, Emma wasn't alone anymore. She was in the presence of a love so powerful, it felt both wild and safe, like the untamed force of nature itself cradling her in its arms. As the clock struck 12, Emma felt her pulse quicken, as though midnight itself had chosen her for some hidden secret. The garden, usually silent, seemed to awaken with whispers carried by the wind, rustling through the leaves like a gentle song only she could hear. Emma's breath trembled in her chest as she stepped deeper into the shadows, her heart guiding her more than her mind. The garden no longer felt like her quiet refuge, it had transformed into a stage where something unseen but deeply alive was unfolding. She could almost feel his presence beside her, an aura of strength, wild and raw, yet softened by a strange tenderness that seemed to embrace her without touch. It was as if the night itself had chosen to reveal to her a hidden companion, someone who had been there all along, waiting for her courage to awaken. Her fingers grazed the rough bark of a nearby tree, grounding her, even as her imagination painted the image of strong arms wrapping around her, protective yet gentle, a sanctuary she had secretly longed for all her life. The silence between her and the shadows felt heavy with unspoken promises. It wasn't empty, it was alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. Emma closed her eyes, and in that stillness, she could almost hear his breath, steady and calm, mingling with hers as though their souls had already begun to intertwine. A warmth spread through her chest, not born of the air but of something far deeper, a recognition, an unshakable knowing that she belonged to this moment, to this presence. She whispered into the darkness, her voice trembling yet brave, "I feel you." The words slipped out like a confession, raw and real, and the garden seemed to shiver in response, leaves trembling, shadows shifting, as though the night itself had been waiting to hear her heart finally speak. In that single moment, Emma was no longer a woman lost in longing, she was a soul on the edge of love, standing before a mystery that promised both passion and protection. The air grew heavier, thick with anticipation, as though the universe itself held its breath. Emma's eyes darted between the flickering shadows, every movement igniting sparks of wonder inside her chest. Then, slowly, from the veil of darkness, a figure emerged, not fully, not enough to break the magic, but just enough for her to feel the undeniable reality of his presence. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his silhouette outlined by the pale silver of the moon. Power radiated from him, not in a way that threatened her, but in a way that assured her she was safe, cherished even. Emma's lips parted, and she felt her throat tighten, unable to form words. She didn't need to. His eyes found hers, deep and intense, holding her in place as if the rest of the world had dissolved around them. For a heartbeat, for an eternity, there was nothing but that gaze, strong, searching, and strangely tender. Her chest rose and fell with a rhythm that wasn't entirely her own, it felt as if their hearts were beating together, aligned by some ancient law of love that neither could escape. The stillness between them became electric, every second humming with possibility, every breath thick with the unspoken. She wanted to step closer, to bridge the fragile space between them, but something held her back, the delicious tension of waiting, of savoring the depth of this newfound connection. Emma felt tears sting her eyes, not from sorrow but from the overwhelming beauty of the moment. Here was the love she had long dreamed of, not polished, not ordinary, but wild, real, and raw. Midnight had brought her more than she ever imagined. It had delivered a soul who saw her without words, who understood her silence, and who would hold her heart like no one ever had. Time seemed to fold in on itself, stretching the moment into something timeless, sacred. Emma felt as though she had stepped out of her ordinary life and into a dream she never dared to believe could be real. The night cradled them, moonlight painting silver halos on the garden walls, while the silence between them deepened into intimacy. At last, she gathered the courage to take a single step forward, her heart pounding like thunder inside her chest. The figure did not move away. Instead, his presence grew warmer, more tangible, as if he had been waiting all along for her to close the distance. When she finally stood near enough to feel the warmth of his breath mingling with hers, Emma's world shattered and rebuilt itself in a heartbeat. All her loneliness, her doubts, her fears, they dissolved into the midnight air, replaced by the certainty of something fierce and unshakable. His eyes, steady and unyielding, promised her a love not bound by time or circumstance, but rooted in the very essence of who they were. She reached out, trembling, and though their hands barely touched, it felt like an entire universe had bloomed in the space between their fingers. Emma knew she would never again be the woman she was before this night. She had crossed into a realm of passion and belonging that could never be undone. Midnight had spoken, had revealed the secret she was destined to discover. That love is not always gentle, nor predictable, but when it finds you, it claims you completely. And in that garden, under the silver glow of the moon, Emma surrendered her heart, her soul, her forever, into the arms of a love that was as wild as it was eternal.